Alright, this is a tutorial. I'd like to talk briefly about Unreal Engine 5 interface. Maybe it's after the installation. So first, to install Unreal Engine 5, you need to launch Epic Games. Once you launch this, you have this option to add a version of engine. So right now I already did 4.27 as well as 5, and then you can launch. One thing I want to just notice is in options, you can actually choose what component you want to install along with your engine. I would recommend to install the starter content as well as a template. The reason is if you don't do it, later when you launch, you won't have this template available for you. So if you did your installation, but if you forget to do that, you can always go to options, then you can check these two options. Okay, and then I can hit apply. I should be able to get all the component available. So you can see the installation will start initialize. Well, now you can see this installation has been complete. I'm ready to launch. But before I launch, I want to show you one more thing about installation is the plugins. Right now, if I check included plugins, you can see I already have the Twinmotion and DataSmith Twinmotion plugin. This is something really depends on how you want to use it. You probably want to add additional plugins. So here I will show you really quick. If you go to Marketplace, this is a place you can search additional plugins or buy the asset for your Unreal. So here, if I just simply search Twinmotion, right, and then you can see the content related to Twinmotion. In order to bring a Twinmotion file as an asset into Unreal, you need to install two plugins. First one is called DataSmith Twinmotion Importer. Basically, this is no difference from other DataSmith plugins. So if you install this one, you will have one more additional file which Unreal will be able to bring in is a Twinmotion file. Right? So DataSmith Twinmotion Importer. Another package you have to install is called Twinmotion Content. This one is actually really huge. It's about 30 gigabytes. The reason is Twinmotion file, as you can see, is really small. It's only reference to the actual asset inside the library. So in order to make Unreal be able to read Twinmotion file, you have to install this external library into Unreal as well. So this is a pretty big plugin, takes 30G. So make sure you get both installed. Then you are ready to launch the Unreal program. Okay, so this is additional thing you have to do. Okay, so I'm ready to launch Unreal 5.0. I will go ahead launch it, and you can see how the interface looks like. Continue. So once you start to launch Unreal Engine 5, the interface allows you to choose from one of the template. So you can either go to Games, right, Film, Architecture, or Vehicle Design. In my opinion, it doesn't matter which one you can start. You might want to start with architecture if you are familiar with the typical ArcViz workflow. But I would recommend start whatever one you want. I will start with a blank first. This is an easier, clean start. You don't have to worry about too many files, being put into your library. You don't have to worry about blueprint or other preset. So I will start with a really, really simple blank environment, and then you can define the project location. Just make sure you have enough space in that location, and then I will start with my project name. I will just say this FA22B, right? So give a name for your project and then click create. Right, so this is basically a minimum starting point. In the future, once you get familiar with everything in Unreal interface workflow, you can start with other template. For example, AR, for example, HoloLens, other VR, first person, third person. All right, I will start with a blank first. And then when you click create, it's basically relaunch the engine, and then it's trying to generate all the content you need. Okay, so let's right. So after about 5 minutes, so the Unreal Engine relaunched. You can see this is actually the default interface of Unreal Engine 5. The first thing you probably notice is in the corner is trying to prepare the shaders. This is actually default in Unreal. Even you start with a brand new blank file, there's still some shaders available. Is trying to compile all the shaders nodes. So that's gonna take some time to complete these shaders. But you don't have to wait. You can do other stuff. Just look around the interface. So before we start, I just want to talk really quick. In the content browser, you should have a really kind of empty minimum content available in this file because we didn't really put any resource like content start or material or 3D geometry in yet. So that's the reason the project folder is extremely small at this point, very empty. So that's a content browser. Another thing I like to talk at the beginning is the plugins. So here, if you go to settings and click plugins, you need to think about what plugins you want to activate before you do anything. So in the plugins, as you recall, we already did the Twinmotion, right? So if you search Twinmotion, this is the two plugin we installed in the engine, but has not been activated yet. So if you check, just click yes, you are going to activate this engine. And when you do this, it usually asks you to restart the whole engine right now. So go ahead to do it. You don't have to wait the shader to complete, because once you restart, it will just resume this shader preparing task. Right. So here I will click restart. It will relaunch the Unreal. So I just relaunched the Unreal Engine 5 after plugin being activated. So now I can go ahead and close this window. The next, I will talk briefly about the whole interface. I know these shaders are still preparing. You don't have to worry about it. It's kind of work in a behind the screen. So first thing, maybe I will start from the top of this menu. So file is basically the menu. You can create a new level. You can save all the levels or asset. Edit is a place you can do, copy paste. It is a typical stuff. You do have this access to project settings and plugin settings, right? Or editor prereference. This is exactly the same place you can find in the settings button, and here you can see the plugin and the project settings. So you can access the same content from multiple locations. So that's in a menu. Window basically is a place you can create multiple windows. For example, you can control multiple viewports. You can open developer log. You can turn on outliners, which is this guy. You can see all the content here. So just in case if you accidentally close anything, in a scene, you can always go to the window, and you are able to just reopen them. Right. If you don't want to spend time to try to memorize all of these necessary windows, you can actually go to layout. You can load in the default editor layout, so it just pop up all the windows back to it should be. In general, I like to open outliner for sure. Usually also I want to open the word settings. This is a window. Basically, if I open, you see the word setting right here. Right. This is kind of additional details associated with the level. So that is in the word settings. All right, so let's keep going to tools. Tools is a place you can do a lot of operations. For example, you can find a blueprint, you can search, you can testing in the different platforms, you can set up profiles. We'll get into this later. Build is a concept you can package a level. For example, you can bake the lighting, you can optimize your gameplay with the pre-baked content. So this is all here. You can build lights. You can build geometries. So there's many different settings here. In my opinion, the only thing you probably need to just remember now is build lighting only. This could be a really useful one. Sometimes when you create a new light, you want to see the shadow baked. So this could be the quick way to bake the lights. You can also define the quality when you bake. Select is basically just as I said, you can select different content based on the filters. Actor, we don't really use that too much, and help. Okay, so this is the top menu. In the second line, basically this is your content. Of course, the main means this is the main level. So if I open the content browser, you can see this is the name of the level. In the future, we'll create some other asset. You can, for example, if I create a material, or if I create any actual content. I don't have them by now, but you can double click, open those content, and then you can using this tag to dock them. So it's a really useful place. You can have multiple windows docked along the level. Okay, then let's move on. Save. This is basically save all the open geometries which material has not been saved. So you can do save, or you can do the same thing to save all. Okay. Then the next one is the select mode. You can switch between the default select to landscape. It basically gives you additional tools. You can do landscape, you can do foliage. You see the tool has a different libraries you can use. In default, we basically keep everything in select. Okay, so that's the default mode. The next one is create content. When you create content, you can create, for example, geometry, lights, shapes, cinematic, visual effects, volumes, right, or class. This is the component you can assemble a very complicated Unreal thing. You can also choose this called place actor panel. So the panel will be kind of docked on the left side. Then you can switch, between this actor. If you click, actually here basic, you can see the actors, characters, palm, point light. So this is really convenient. You don't have to go through the menus. You can make this available along the left side. Okay. All right. Yeah, I think that's basically the the panels. Okay. To create geometry, the most frequently used one is import content. You can import from Rhino, any 3D modeling program. You can bring in texture. You can bring in skeletal mesh for animation. Is all here. You can also do the Quixel bridge. There's a huge library. You can download the content. You can get from Unreal Marketplace, also the content browser, which is here at the bottom. Okay. So for me, I will just maybe do a quick demo. If you want to create a cube, just drag the cube in. So here is a cube. Okay. All right. So the next one, I will actually go ahead close this place actor. I want to have a really clean interface, right? So, but you can place actor panel dock if you want. Data Smith is the one we because we activate the Twinmotion, so here later you can input a Data Smith with the Twinmotion format. Okay. All right. Yeah, I think that's about input. The next one is the Blueprint. Blueprint is the scripting programming language besides C language in Unreal. So here, if you open Level Blueprint, you can do some scripting here. As you can see, this is basically it's called main level blueprint. You can dock this, right? So here you can switch between the 3D level to the level blueprint. Okay. So in the future we'll talk more about the level blueprint, but right now you can docking this window or you can close the window. Okay, so that's a blueprint. There's a lot of other blueprint classes you can create. For example, for Pong, for actions. We will cover this in the future. Okay. The next one is a level sequence. Basically, this is a sequence of actions. You can sort of set up a timeline. Then you can animate characters or cameras through this level sequence here. Okay. The next one is a play. So if you play, you basically launched the game. So whatever script or interactions available, you can basically see this in the first person or third person view. So by default, WASD is a way you can navigate through the screen. UE is up and down. Okay, and then you can use escape to stop the play. So that's how you play the game. You can also choose a different platform. So if you have the VR headset with, for example, Oculus Link, HTC Vive, you can have this option for VR preview. Okay. All right. In the future, I will also talk about if you do prepare your file for other platforms, for example, HoloLens, you can actually activate this from here, or Android. For example, Oculus Quest is Android. All right, so that's basically the line on the top. Then here in the viewport, you have these options to switch between the different mode, the perspective, camera mode. You can basically switch from top, perspective. This is pretty straightforward. Okay. You can also change the display. By default is fully light, but you can choose wireframe. Sometimes you want to know the density or the pixel number or the polygon number. This would be the quick way. Switch to the wireframe. Visibility is preview the collisions. So there's many different modes. And light is actually pretty useful. If you are just purely deal with the material and texture mapping, light is a good option. Okay. Yeah, you can also choose other plays like level of detail, visualizers. We'll get into this in the future. Okay, so I'll switch back to light. The next one is a show. You can set up a filter to hide certain geometries. So usually, I don't really use that too much. But if you don't want to see collision, you hide the collision. But if you check it, the collision objects would be show up. So it could be useful in some case. All right, so that's about the viewport. The tag here basically is just an indicator of the different actions. So if you select objects, you can move, rotate. So that's the standard with whatever 3D program you used before. When you're using this mode, for example, I'm using move. Unreal give you the option. You can do the grid lock. So this is a place you can snapping with certain intervals. So that's kind of like a snap. So rotate for snapping, scale for snapping as well. Okay. The next one is camera speed. This one you already experienced in Twinmotion, right? You can change the speed, from really fast to really slow, so you can play with it. And the next one is a viewport. Usually, I think this is something I keep as a perspective as a single viewport. But if you want to do a standard, front, side, top, you can do that. Okay, so this is the viewport. Then let's move on to this side, right on the right. So the first one is the setting. This is the place you can change word settings, which is already open here. Word settings you can turn on. You can do project settings. Project setting is actually the most complicated one. Let me dock this so you can see the main and project setting. This is a place you can control all the parameters associated with the project, all with Unreal Engine as well. Super useful. For example, if you want to, for example, I want to control input, you can go to input. You can see tons of options, how to control the keyboard, mouse, players, motion controllers. is really robust. Okay, so project settings. All right, and then in these settings, there's other available one. There's a really good one I think is worth to mention is scalability. So consider if you are running this on a laptop, you don't really have a good GPU. In that case, you probably want to do an auto or you want to switch to a low quality. So you can still do a lot of quick, fast work without worry about the frame rate or lagging. Because my GPU is really good, I'm using the Epic. Right? But if you suffered about the slowness in your laptop, you want to switch to a lower, quality for display. This won't affect when you're packaging. This is just for the real-time working environment. Okay, so scalability. All right, I think that's pretty much about the settings. So let's quickly talk about the outliner. Outliner basically is a list of objects in your level. So if I double click, I can select these objects. I can use F. If you select object and then use F key, you can zoom in to that object. Right? So this is a selection. Once you select this object, automatically in the detail panel, you can see the parameters associated with it. Right? So you can manipulate those features. The standard one is the transform. As you can see the XYZ location. But really it depends on which object, or we call actors, you selected. The control parameter will be different. They're always here at the bottom. Okay, so this is the detail panel. Just keep in mind, Unreal is pretty complicated. So if you select a component which has a hierarchy embedded, so you can actually see this hierarchy right here. So it depends on hierarchy, the parameter will be different. Okay. Yeah, it's a little bit complicated for the beginners. All right, we'll get into this in the future. Okay. So that's about the parameters. And then the word panel, I think we already talked about this before. So here you can change the game mode. In the future, you can set up first person, third person, VR. This can be visualized through the word settings. Okay, so let's move on to the bottom. On the bottom, we have this called content browser. Okay, right now it's renamed to content drawer. That's old name in Engine 4 is content browser. So here, if you really want to use it a lot, you can actually dock in the layout. So it's always be here consistently. And then you can always drag and drop objects from here. Okay, so that is called content browser. Oh, now it's called content browser. But if you close it, now it's renamed to content drawer. That's interesting. Okay, yeah, that's about it. Output log, you don't really have to worry right now, but in the future when you build, you can actually monitor the progress from here. If there's a bug, it will show up. Command line, we don't really use it for now. All right, I think that's pretty much about the whole interface of Unreal Engine 5. Also, the last, not the least, I want to talk quickly. Once you create a project in a file manager, you can actually see the folder. And if you check the properties, the file is really tiny. It's only 20 megabits, right? So it's not a big deal. The reason is we start everything with a blank. In the future, when you're adding the new content, this content folder will grow. When you build or publish any content, you will see more and more stuff will show up in the saved and intermediate folder. So just keep in mind, right now the file is really small. To quickly launch this project in the future, you don't really have to go through the Unreal launcher. You can just directly double click this project file, then you can open the file. Okay, I think that's it.